The Siege of Albracca, an effort by the King Agri Khan to take the hands of Lady Angelica of Carthay, in which the entire kingdom was sacked by Agri Khan. The lady, her father the king, and the paladins of Charlemagne were all sent backwards towards the mighty citadel Albracca and forced into dire straits. Now, under normal circumstances there would be no such dire straits, but the fact that Astolfo and Roland were not among the paladins proved detrimental. Astolfo was out seeking another paladin, Roland, and Roland was pursuing a woman who had caught his eye. Despite their efforts, the Carthayans stood little chance against Agri Khan's forces. But as the battle raged on, there was hope yet. Roland, you see, the mightiest of Charlemagne's paladins and carrier of the mythical sword Durandal, was merely a day's travel away, and Lady Angelica managed to sneak a courier free from the citadel to go and find him. Upon getting the information, Roland quickly horsed up and made his way toward Carthay. With Durandal at hand, it was going to be a quick and easy turnaround in the favor of our heroes. However, heading back, Roland found himself coming to a bridge, crossing a ever-bubbling river. A castle sat on the other side, and a woman stood nearby at the bridge's near end, smiling and ready to greet travelers. She was attractive and warm. In her hands a goblet of the same bubbling water that rushed beneath the bridge, to which she held it out to the paladin, saying it was courtesy to every traveler crossing the bridge. Unwilling to be rude, Roland reached out and accepted the bubbling brew, swinging it down in a quick drink, after which things changed. Wait, why was he moving over the bridge again? Who was this beautiful woman standing before him? Oh, that's right. She was to take him into the castle. That was where he belonged. Obviously, he was a knight returning home. This was a single sip from the cup of oblivion, enchanting him into service of this woman, alongside several other knights who sat equally stupefied around him. Simple as that, Roland was removed from the board. Fortunately, just as Roland was taken from the board, Astolfo found himself venturing to Circassia, a nearby kingdom, under the hold of King Sacripant, who was preparing to go and help the King of Carthay. Despite this quest to aid them, Sacripant found himself enamored with the sheer handsomeness of Astolfo, and could not let him go so freely, and headed out to capture the paladin. Despite this, Astolfo was more than fast enough to escape, having the horse of Roland, who was blessed with extreme speed. So, as his allies fought against the Tartarian forces, Astolfo found himself fighting a battle in his own right. For him, though, the battle against Sacripant was not too dangerous. He had befriended not only a knight, Florismart, but his sister, Fleur de Lis, and the two of them, alongside the golden lance that Astolfo had taken from the Trap of Argalia, see the video here, managed to best the king with little trouble, and sent him back to his forces, and them on their way to Carthay, though without the diversion they certainly could have turned the tide earlier. Don't worry, this isn't the last you'll hear of Sacripant. Unfortunately for Astolfo, the battles against Sacripant's forces were the least of his concerns, as in his journey alongside his fellow knight and Fleur de Lis, he found his way to a bridge, overlooking a babbling river, at which a beautiful woman stood bearing a cup of boiling water. Yes, they reached the land of oblivion as well, heading towards Carthay, and its river, and the woman keeping watch at the bridge. Here, Fleur de Lis, having never wanted to come this far, had informed Astolfo and her brother not to drink from the goblet, and thus, with a quick throw, the enchantress let the water strike the ground and called out her army of enthralled knights, including Roland. And that was enough for Astolfo to put his foot to the gas. All of the paladins may not have been enough to best Roland, let alone Astolfo by himself, so he ran, taking his horse to its limits and rushed away. Florismart, on the other hand, attempted to fight, but saw the odds and submitted himself to the enchantress, drinking the water and becoming an enthralled servant, whilst his sister made an escape. Astolfo found himself back at Albracca in haste, much to the glee of Angelica and his fellow peers, who knew the tide of battle was going to turn, if nothing else because of the lance which Astolfo carried, and the horse upon which he rode. So, after telling Angelica what was going on with Roland, Astolfo decided it was time to go and make a name for himself, and he marched straight into Agri Khan's camp. Once there, he 1v100'd the entire force, beating them left, right, center, up, down, and sideways, and all 7 ways to Sunday, until Agri Khan himself stepped up, and the music changed. Astolfo was no longer the one they needed to fear. No, the boss music was coming from Agri Khan. You see, he was no fool, nor was he inept, and in battle, despite all of Astolfo's boons, he defeated the paladin. And even had he not, the numbers were soon upon Astolfo as well, leaving him captured. Agri Khan would proceed to march into Carthay again and continue his siege, striking and knocking at the impregnable tower, and ransacking the town around them, flaunting the horse which Astolfo rode all the while. Even with the arrival of Sakrapan's forces the next morning, and yet another opponent that was capable of throwing down with Agri Khan, the sheer number of Tartarian allies and his own incredible acumen kept the heroes on the back foot. Days became weeks, and any rallies were short-lived. The King Agri Khan was too strong, and his army too fierce. Death was common, and the allied forces were running low on morale. With Astolfo captured and Roland indisposed, things were bleak. Yet there was one thing all these small skirmishes were good for: distraction. Astolfo's last words to Angelica about Roland, and an entire castle of enchanted knights, was all it took for her to stir up a master plan. Amid the losses, she took it upon herself to head to the land of oblivion, where the river Letha sits, stripping the will of all who drink its waters, to find the aid that she needed. She snuck into the castle, and being a magician herself, managed to dispel the charms not only upon Roland, but also the other 9 knights, of which Florismart was not one of them. His story is that of a different day, and sent them in haste to Albracca, to the defense of the Kingdom of Carthay, and to defeat King Agri Khan. If Astolfo was an airstrike, Roland's arrival was akin to a nuclear bomb. His mere presence proved enough to turn the tide of battle, sending bodies to all directions with casual attacks, and giving him more than enough leeway to approach great Agri Khan himself for a conflict. Agri Khan, seeing the approaching Roland, left the battlefield and hurried deep into the pine woods, seeing his soldiers scattered and disoriented in the process. Roland, unwilling to let him slip away, gave chase. The king, however, had killed 2 birds with 1 stone. He would have Roland alone to kill, and his forces too would be left to keep doing what they had been doing before. The ultimate equalizer was off the board. The 2 heavyweights, after the realization set in, took aim at one another. Not much detail is given about their fight. It was long, and considering Roland was not only motivated, but carrying Durandal with him at the time, he was certainly trying for a victory. Daylight turned to that of moonlight, however. The mythical sword had failed to land a killing blow, or any meaningful blow at all for that matter, on Agri Khan, from the ground or horseback. The pair had fought for several hours straight, and no decision had been made. Fatigue was beginning to sit in, and a ceasefire was made, just so that they could regain their strength. A time for respite amid bloodshed. Sitting on opposite ends of the meadow they had made in their conflict, they found themselves talking. The Christian Roland, keeper of the faith, and the pagan Tartar Agri Khan, who struck up conversation, which quickly turned into fierce debate. A debate which angered Agri Khan to no end and took him to strike out at Roland in battle, starting yet another attack beneath only the light of the moon between these 2 immovable objects. Their second exchange, like the first, took hours, and as moonlight became daylight, they were still fighting, and it was here the first blow was landed. Agri Khan delivered a strike so heavy it split Roland's shield in 2. Had Roland not been blessed to suffer no wounds, the attack probably would have killed him. And yet, it still caused every bone in his body to jostle and every joint to jolt. Somehow, I think that's worse. Imagine having a full-body, funny bone reaction. Youch. Or, I would have said that, had Roland not returned the favor tenfold. The mighty sword Durandal struck back, and with such force, that not only was Agri Khan split in 2, not only was his armor completely destroyed, breaking mail and plate like they were planks of wood. But the horse he rode on was twain. Roland saw this, the mighty Agri Khan having taken him to the limit, and felt ashamed. He was supposed to be the strongest, and yet a single man, whose name he had not known mere days prior, was able to fight him for hours on end. His shame quickly turned to acknowledgement, as in defeat the Tartarian king asked to be baptized in the name of Roland's god, to see heaven, for though he was an evil man, he did not want to see the next life as a rebel. Roland honored this request and quickly baptized the man in the waters of a nearby font, watching him die. From here he made his way back, and the tide finally turned in favor of the heroes. Astolfo was let free. Roland stood proud, for he was strong, and the Tartarian army was routed. But what is next for the paladins of Charlemagne? Carthay was safe. Roland was back among his peers. Astolfo had been freed, and Angelica was proudly seated upon the walls. All that was left was to find Reynold, and everything could go back to normal. Wait, why is Reynold here? And why is the King of Carthay attacking him? Well, that's a story for a different day. Be good people, and as always, thanks for watching.